Okay, delighted that you're considering taking A-level physical education at Northgate High School. I'm Mr. Smith, head of department. Um, so really, it's my job just to give you some insight into the course, future kind of prospects, and maybe career paths through the qualification, and really the structure of the qualification and how you're going to be assessed. So it's a linear course, as all A levels are. And in the summer, you're going to sit two papers. Okay, both papers are 2 hours long, and they're broken down into three sections each. So section A, section B, and section C. So fundamentally, section A in both papers is anatomy and physiology, exercise physiology. In paper two, there's a little bit of biomechanical movement and printables. For section B, that's traditionally kind of earmarked as sports psychology, but in paper one, it's focused a little bit more on skill acquisition and memory models and the functioning of the working memory. Whereas in paper two, we look a little bit at sports psychology side of anything from personality to anxiety to arousal. So things going on within our brain that can affect our performance in sport. And then paper one really takes a look at the history of sport, where sports come from and how it's evolved. And then within paper two, we start to look at kind of modern day sports, so the kind of post World War II era. We're looking at technology in sport, the developments in commercialization, supplementation, drug taking in sport, and the positives and the negatives of that. So hopefully, there'll be a little kind of glimpse of some more of those topic areas as we work through. So thinking about future pathways through the qualification, each year, each cohort are completely different. I mean, we've had individuals that are off doing a lot of individuals off doing this kind of sport and exercise science routes at university. You can see there sports medicine, physiotherapy, and sports therapy. This year, we've got 3 or 4 students really kind of intrigued by nutrition, and they found some sport, exercise, and nutrition courses at university. We've got 3 or 4 this year that are looking to get into psychology or certainly sports psychology. And then we've had 1 or 2 students over the last couple of years find some little niche courses linked to kind of sports technology and particularly design linked to sports technology. And fundamentally, some students also use PE as one of their A-level qualifications to support an apprenticeship in a wide variety of fields, including engineering and manufacturing. So, um, yeah, the vast majority that take the qualification have got that vested interest in sport, and I'd say quite a few of the individuals will go off to try and seek um, their higher education in one of these fields. Thinking about the students, the year 13 students were kind enough to share their thoughts about the qualification and were quite honest with that. So the video will give you a chance to really pause and just take in some of their comments if you wish. And this is our current 13 cohort. Around about a third of them there were able to provide some comments for us for this video. Both groups are full. Year 13 is probably 3 or 4 short of being full, so it's a popular course and it's in high demand. So we've set, demanding, challenging entry requirements, but that will set you up brilliantly for the demands of the course. Now, as I mentioned, the course is of a linear nature, 2-year course, with the 2 exam papers that are highlighted. And both paper one and paper two will combine to create 70% of the course. So academically, it's heavily weighted on the theoretical side. Now, although I say practical assessment 30%, actually, your practical performance is 15%. So generally, don't worry about that. We get a large number of students. I'd probably say on the whole, probably half of students would argue that they haven't got a really, really strong background in sport. And when I mean strong, I mean maybe playing to a really high local standard or certainly county, if not national level. A number of individuals are very keen in a sport and understand that it's only 15% of the qualification and they'll max out on as many marks as they can possibly get. Um, if you are a strong county national standard player, that's only going to serve you very well when we're looking at getting the video evidence for that. And then the further 15%, we undertake a written analysis and evaluation, which is really interesting. You get to apply all of that theory that we've learnt about, and you get to identify weaknesses in your performance and look to justify the weaknesses in your performance linked to theoretical aspects, and then come up with some corrective measures for that. Okay, so that's the kind of linear nature of the course. And really, fundamentally, the message there is don't panic about the practical. It's something we can work with you on. 70% of the course is theoretically based. And if you're looking to take a route into those careers I looked at, like sports medicine, physiotherapy, the universities are now recognising the academic nature of the subject. So that will serve you really, really well. As and when we can, and we're not in kind of the COVID situation, we do get out and visit as much as we can and try and take the theory into a practical nature. So we've had trips to Essex where we've looked at loads of sports technology and looked at physiological tests with the VO2 max test. We've been to Clip and Climb several times and looked at anxiety and how we can manage that. And we've taken trips to driving ranges and bowling alleys to look at other aspects of psychology and the impact they can have on sports performance. So within the two papers, we break down into areas of assessment. So these themes of assessment. So we have area of assessment 1, area of assessment 2, and area of assessment 3. And these are going to be vital to our study within the subject and are so prominent in my teaching within that subject. AO1 is so important. And in the first month or two, we really kind of hone in on what we need to do as a student and what we need to do as a group and the relationship between student and teacher to ensure that we're acquiring adequate amounts of knowledge and we're able to recall and retrieve that knowledge. We'll do a lot of retrieval practice, a lot of spacing kind of revision in terms of reviewing material that we've covered over the last few weeks and keep kind of regurgitating that and look at retrieval practice in class and model that for you to copy outside of school. And then really it'd be my job as the teacher then to expose you to opportunities to apply that knowledge, okay, to particular contextual scenarios within questions as well as practically if we had a trip out. And then the deeper skills of analysis and evaluation are linked to the extended answer questions that we get in the paper. So for both paper 1 and paper 2, there will be 1/8 and 1 15-mark question per section. So we're going to have 1/8 and 1 15-mark extended answer question for section A, section B, and section C. So quite heavily weighted, with only around about 10 to 15 marks of short answer questions, okay, per paper. So those skills linked to the green there, the analysis and evaluation, will be skills that we start to develop early on. And really what we're looking at there is our ability to analyze and break down into parts of theory or to analyze some data that's being presented due to drug testing and the number of medals that have been lost due to false drug tests at the Olympics, or we're looking to evaluate the kind of positives, the negatives, the pros and the cons, the fors and against of a particular theory or against particular athletes of differing abilities. And then really finally, it's just to kind of reflect back to that kind of first slide as such I had there that identified all those different sections. And sometimes students are really keen to know and quite fond on particular aspects of the course because they've already got an idea of a direction that they may wish to take. So we're looking at sport and society, history of sport, how it's evolved from things like mob football and how it's evolved into the sport we know today. Linked into that in some respects, or an advancement of that, is now the technology, huge amounts of technology in sport, advancements in GPS, testing, physiological kind of baseline testing, and then the idea of commercialization and the impact that that's had on performers, spectators, and officials. If you think about VAR at present, how positive is that in football compared to how negative it is? Drug taking in sport as well. The biomechanical principles really is kind of like almost like a mini kind of physics topics, looking at angular motion, looking at the Bernoulli principle, looking at linear motion and how athletes want to either encompass aspects of air resistance, but I fundamentally probably want to overcome it and try and streamline themselves. Lots of sports psychology, as I said, about personality, and that links into psychology A level as well, really, really nicely with lots of different theories that cross over. And then section A really is fundamentally we'll look at break the body down into its parts and look at the kind of structure and function of the body physiologically and how that differs and how it responds to exercise. And then really we get onto the kind of almost the physical application to exercise. So how are we preparing our bodies for sport? How are we also sustaining activity through the energy system? So a little bit of biochemistry in there. And additionally, how we're recovering um, in sport after those activities. So hopefully that's a reasonable overview. As I said, you can kind of rewind and go back to anything, and it may give you a chance just to go back over those important aspects that you think you might want to hear again. And additionally, you can kind of pause and read some of the student comments that they've made as well. Obviously, if there's any questions, don't hesitate to email, and I'll look forward to answering any questions you might have.